This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to the latest episode of Doc and Jock. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. Boy, am I excited this week to fire it up and chat with my guy, Adam, the Jock Strozinski. So much to get into. It's bowl season. I had a chance to enjoy the SEC title game, had a chance to enjoy the Big Ten title game on Saturday. Oh, my goodness. It was fun, but it was disappointing at the same time. I'll share why. You get an opportunity now to see what Michigan is going to be able to accomplish against Alabama. The bowl game is set for them. And because it's a funny story, when you look at the general interest of a bowl game, I was a little surprised, to say the least, that Alabama didn't make it, and we'll talk about that as well. Second half of the podcast, we'll talk about the Detroit Lions. The reason why I am surprised is that, clearly Alabama's in a different class than Michigan. So to see that matchup be set, when I tweeted it, it was funny because of the fact that I had to tweet it 3 times because I thought it was the ReliaQuest Bowl. I thought it was a different bowl altogether. So I tweeted the announcement wrong 3 times. That's how little I cared about
you
this.
Sent this to me, and I was like, what is this? I just had to Wikipedia what the hell this bowl is to find out that it was the old Outback Bowl.
Yeah, ReliaQuest Bowl. I was like, I didn't even know what that was. So I'm looking at it, I'm like, God, I get this wrong. And nobody even cared to correct me, like, dude, get it right. So it was funny as all hell. But I think what's crazier is that Michigan fan was like, nobody's going to care. Michigan's going to have 15 people just declare out anyway. It's not going to be any sign of anything. Michigan's going to get their ass whooped, and that's just the way it is. I just thought the matchup was kind of, to me, I want to see it because I think Alabama's going to win by a lot. But my goodness, I think the interest from Michigan fans like, well, yay, we got to a bowl, but everybody's just riding high that, hey, Michigan beat Ohio State. They got their great recruit. They got some money, they get the pub, and all is good. The only really drawback
They're
is
looking forward to next season already.
They're looking forward to it. Some were a little disappointed that Ward Manuel got a contract extension, but that's here nor there. What did you make of the whole bowl announcement with Michigan taking on Alabama New Year's Eve a day in Tampa? It's just a big nothing burger to me, but hopefully Alabama at least gets some semblance of revenge. But I don't think Michigan fans care at all.
So because of the current setup with college football, right, in your tournament and the brackets that you've got, this is a giant nothing burger. This is not a big deal. I think for the programs themselves, it's a bigger deal because you get the extra practices. And if you're Michigan, you get to kind of work on some new things. If you're Alabama, you get to work on some new things. This is Caleb DeBoer's first season, so he's trying to install roots in Alabama, and he's trying to set and build his program. I think for Michigan, again, Sharon Moore, his first season as head coach, and he's trying to reestablish what this brand is and what he wants it to look like. So from that standpoint, cool, you get the bowl game, you get to go and you get to take on each other and you get to do some things. As far as the bowl itself goes, I had no idea what this bowl even was. Like I said, I had to Google it, had to Wikipedia it, and I had to read through it to figure out that it was the old Outback Bowl. So now that it's the old Outback Bowl, that makes sense to me that these two teams are going to it, because initially I was like, why are you going to this bowl? What the hell is this? And when you kind of delve a little bit deeper into some of the storylines that are here between Michigan and Alabama, I think it makes a little bit more sense why these two teams are playing each other. Because initially you're like, Alabama was like the 12th ranked team. Alabama was a team that was in contention for the college football playoff. Alabama was a team that has a gripe, whether it's legit or not, they have a gripe for being the first team out. And Michigan was nowhere even close. Michigan, you're not even sniffing this current setup. You're not even sniffing this playoff bracket. So how are these two teams who are so far apart as far as what took place this season, how are they going to the same bowl? Which kind of leads to your assumption that Alabama is going to truck Michigan in this. And I would say maybe not so fast. And the reason I say not so fast, I think this game might be a little bit closer. I think Alabama wins, but I think you delve into some of the storylines, and there's a little bit here. Remember, Michigan and Alabama faced each other last year in the college football playoff. That was that first-round matchup. Michigan won that. Michigan ended up playing Washington. Washington's old coach was Caleb DeBoer. Michigan ended up beating Washington and beating Caleb DeBoer to win the national championship. So again, storyline there. Michigan and Alabama have met in the Outback Bowl before. So again, storyline there. I think this is a perennial power with Alabama, and this is a blue chip school in Michigan. So I think there are ties there. There is interest there. I think the storylines from last year that get brought over and drug over, I think make this an interesting matchup. The reason I say not so fast with Alabama trucking Michigan in this game is because remember what Michigan did to Alabama. Remember what Michigan did to Washington. It was a lot of running that football. It was a lot of ground and pound. And I think Michigan's identity is built on that run. It's built on having that offensive line that likes to punch you in the face. There's a lot of the same guys on this Michigan team that were there last year. There's a lot of the same guys on that Alabama team and a lot of guys from that Washington team that came over with Caleb DeBoer. If Michigan is able to kind of go into that well and pull some of that out, they might have enough talent to give Alabama a run for their money and make it a hard out. I don't think they win this game, but I do think they make it a little bit difficult. Sticking with Alabama, because you brought up the college football playoff, do they have a legit gripe in your estimation? And do you feel that they should be in the college football playoff?
It was crazy because, first and foremost, Alabama lost 3 games. Their losses were brutal. They lost
to Vanderbilt.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
By like 23, I think.
Yeah, but when you look at their strength of schedule compared to SMU, you realize Alabama had more quality wins. And it's just tough because Alabama, you could make a legitimate argument, is the 12th best team in the country and could probably be, considered better than SMU. So I would have not been upset. It would have been something where Alabama could have legitimately made the argument about strength of schedule. They played a tough schedule, and I think that they could have competed. But are they a legitimate contender to win it? That's where it's like, okay, it's not a big loss. But look, it's one of those deals where Alabama's losses were so bad that typically bad losses like that knock you down. So I can see the argument for SMU, something different. But man, I thought the Alabama reactions were fun as hell, just seeing everybody crying. But I do think there will be a consequence. If you want good teams playing each other, that's not a good sign because Alabama's going to be like, what? Look at who SMU scheduled and look at who we scheduled. Why are we going to play Texas? Why are we going to play these teams when, there's no value to that. We can just play Central and figure it out. The icing on the cake will be Alabama decided to do a home and home with Michigan State. And I'll be like, motherfucker. All right, that's what they think is good. And Michigan State will hype it up as, yeah, we're playing good competition. And everybody in the world will be like, yeah, they want to play you because they know they're going to roll your ass over. So it's one of those deals where I don't want to expand it. 12 is good. I like the bracket. I like the way it was announced. I like the manner in which the structure went with the conference title games. I thoroughly enjoyed Georgia, Texas, and Oregon and Penn State. But just from a Michigan State perspective, we are so far below what that was that I watched on Saturday evening that it just I was enjoying the good football, the competitiveness, the back and forth nature, the big hits, the fan base, the passion. It just was real fun to see good quality college football, and then to see Oregon, stamp their spot, and to see Penn State still struggle, but compete in a game with a top 10 team. Oregon looks like the best team collectively, but at the same token, I like what Texas can bring if they can get out of their own way. I was stunned because I saw Texas and Oregon in person, and I thought that Texas, if they play their A game, they can bring it, but they just shoot themselves in the foot far too often. I was like, my God, Sarkisian, what's going on with your team? They were jumping off sides every 3 plays. And it was brutal, and I thought that they should have took advantage much more of what Georgia brought to the table. And Georgia had a backup because their starter left the game. So college football is
annihilated.
College football is in a good spot right now. This tournament's going to be fun. Any early thoughts on who you like? I like the opportunity that Oregon and potentially the outlier could be Texas if they get out there and handle business. But my goodness, Georgia, if they get on a run and they get hot, look out for them too.
Yeah, I like Oregon. I was really impressed with the Big Ten conference championship game. I that was the first time where you could sit down and you could just pop some popcorn and sit back and watch and enjoy. It was a good time. It was a heavyweight slugfest for sure. The one thing I'll say, and I want to get your take on this, I don't necessarily like the setup of the college football playoff. When you have Oregon, who's the number one team, having probably the toughest road to go, I just don't feel like that's fair. I don't feel like you're doing them any justice. This is a very static bracket. You don't reseed. I feel like they need to reseed this bracket, and maybe they get this figured out over the next year or two. But I feel like you put a team like Oregon, who's been dominant since Jump Street, you put them at a bit of a disadvantage with how they've got to go to get to the national championship. Yes, they get that bye, but being crowned the number one seed does them zero favors, especially when you look at what teams what seeds 3 and 4 have to do. It's a little bit easier for them. So I was wondering what your thoughts were on possibly reseeding this bracket, or if you like the static nature that they currently have.
Ooh, reseeding would not be something I would be opposed to. It makes sense, right? Because you want to give an advantage to somebody. I mean, the bye week for Oregon is going to be great. I understand the nature of different paths for different people, but in the end, you got to go out there and win the football game. And I do think the matchups really really bode well for the bowl games that they're going to be featured in. So I do think tweaks will be made. The one thing I don't want to see is expansion. 12 is perfect. I thought that it gave everybody enough opportunity throughout the season to make their case. You get conference winners. People weren't really punished for losing conference title games, so that's fair. And I think that's for the first year. I think now let's see how the games shake out and moving forward, how it's going to look to the audience, how the players are going to respond, and how it's going to be perceived. And it's going to hopefully the matchup. I thought the bracket was done pretty well. I thought it was, other than Alabama, you could make the case that SMU because they did lose. Remember, SMU did lose, and I just think that there's an opportunity for a team to handle business, and it's one of those arguments. Do you really punish a team for conference title game failures? What are you going to do? So college football in an interesting spot in regards to where they're at. The transfer portal now is open, and players are shifting all over the place. So we'll see how that all shakes out and moves forward with how everything plays out in college football. Because before we shift our attention to the Lions, real fast, we'll give it like 5 minutes. How messed up is it that we sit here as Detroit Tigers fans and you get to see the winter meetings and you get to see the Mets just unload their clip and give. And what was crazy is I had this conversation with my wife. I said, what do you think a big time contract is going to be that someone is going to make? And I started giving her contracts. And I said to her, I think it's going to be like 15 years. And if you average 60 million, I was like 780, 790. I said, this guy could get over 8. This guy could get, I said 15 years, like 810. And I was like, man, this kid's going to be crazy, because it harkened back to when there was the whisper that maybe the Tigers were going to be interested in Juan Soto. So when I heard the report on the radio, I said, what number do you think? And we were talking and joking around. And I said, well, the Tigers would probably offer 4 years and $40 million. And we shared a laugh. And then the Tigers, you switch your attention to them, and they signed 37-year-old Alex Cobb, and they're really interested in Peter Goldschmidt. And I'm like, these fuckers combined are 85 years old. Like, no, like that's not, like, here's what you do. Okay, sign those guys, but the first signing should be somebody like a Bregman. Like, what the fuck? Can't there be just one PR signing where you go, all right, like, the fans are, like, interested in this baseball team. They sold out the joint in the playoffs. They brought back interest. The radio station talked about it. The podcast were talking about it. Can we just throw them a bone and give somebody $50 million? And cut, or at least cut, Baez, like the first thing they do is go, we got Cobb.
Mm-hmm.
And that's I get it. He may be somebody that works with Federer and gets better and is the magic that you're looking for at the back end of the rotation that could be good. But that was so underwhelming. I felt like, I don't know what's going on. Like, I'm trying to care less about stuff like that. But in the end, I did kind of feel like, man, when you sit there and you go to a rich friend's house and they open up like a brand new cell phone and you get home and you're like, man, I got the flip phone. And you're like, and then your parents are telling you, well, you better appreciate you got a fucking phone at all. And you're like, okay. But then like your friends got the badass phone and you're like, shit, And because your brain knows, okay, somebody out there's got something I want. I don't want Juan Soto, but my God, could we just get like something better? Like how we don't deserve to be sitting there watching clips of Juan Soto. I did love the Yankee fan reactions, all the people that went viral for pissing on Juan Soto and getting mad. And I love that. That was fun. And the Mets fans' reactions for getting somebody. So I did a little vicarious living through that whole story. But my God, Alex Cobb, who pitched like 20 innings last year, and Goldschmidt, who was an MVP 2 years ago. But he's like, I mean, there's cheap, there's Brad Holmes injury guy. But this is like, I don't care, fans. I'm going after my guys. Your guy's over fucking 35 years old. He's over 35 years old. Can you give us somebody that's like 27? Can you find anybody across the landscape? We'll take the ninth guy in the minors from the Rangers. Anybody. 37-year-old and a old. I was dead. I was like, I had less than any care about what the Tigers did so far.
Dude, I was so frustrated when the news came through. I was like, are we serious right now? Like, it's just spitting in your fans' face. It's so frustrating. Like, go out and sign somebody, add somebody to this roster who's going to make a difference. You're not going to be able to duplicate what you did last year. The way you got to the playoffs and the way you got on that magical run during the playoffs, you did it by hook and by crook. You can't do it every time. You can't lean on your coaching staff to be able to pull some wizardry out of the bag and get you there. Go sign some legit players. Go get a guy like an Alex Bregman. Alex Bregman wants $200 million for like 5 years. Go sign him. What do you like? You have like zero payroll, like zero. Do you realize Juan Soto signed for basically double the Tigers' payroll over the last like 4 or 5 years? Like, it's insane.
It's bad,
like,
man.
The Tigers just don't want to spend money, man. And Chris Ilitch is just spitting in your face. It is so sad and it's so frustrating the way he takes care of this baseball team. It's outrageous to me. To go out and get a guy like Alex Cobb, you're going to put him next to a guy like Tarek Skubal. He's not there helping take pressure off a guy like Tarek Skubal. If Jackson Jobe is what you believe Jackson Jobe is going to be, you're not helping take any pressure off him. Jackson Jobe's going to be on an innings count next year. So by the time you get late in the season, Jackson Jobe is going to be doing spot starts because you're trying to preserve him, because if things work out the way you want them to work out and you're going to get into the playoffs, he's probably going to be your third arm. You need to go out and add somebody else. Alex Cobb's not that guy. Alex Cobb's not going to be that guy that you're looking for. They want to sign guys to these 1 year like fix-em deals. Are we serious? You've seen what Jack Flaherty gave you last year, right? And you were able to spin him off and get some stuff back in return. That's fine. Okay, I get it. But why not bring a guy like Jack Flaherty back? Jack Flaherty has been on record and basically said, yeah, I'll take a 2-year deal to come back. And like, he's not even looking for anything outrageous. Like, he's familiar with this staff. He's familiar with this team. He gave you good quality innings last year. He was solid. Why not go back and get him? Instead, you go get Alex Cobb, who there's a great chance he's going to break down in the middle of the year because, like you said, he's in his mid to upper 30s. Like, the way this baseball team is being put together, like I said, we talked about this last year. We talked about this kind of on the rise to that playoff run. It really feels like it's smartest man in the room. Everybody in that top of that organization is basically talking down to you and telling you, we know best. We're going to do this way because this is the best way. I just don't see it, man. I just don't see it. And to me, it feels like you've got an owner who is penny pinching and you've got a general manager who honestly just thinks he's the smartest guy in all of baseball. And we'll see what happens, but I'm incredibly frustrated by what this organization is doing. Winter meetings is a time where you really kind of start to kind of pump up your fan base, get them excited, go out, do some big signings, get a guy here who's going to help pay dividends, and we're just not seeing it.
Nope.
And it sounds like Bregman's a guy who I think we would all love, right? Familiarity with the coaching staff, a guy who can play third base for you, guy who can hit, and it sounds like the Tigers are out on him because he's going to be about $60 million more than what they want to spend. They want somebody for about $140 million, and he's looking for $200 million. Like, just get it close. Come to an agreement. 180. Let's go. Sign it up. Hosh Padilla. Let's move on. But the Tigers, dude, they're just so stubborn in their ways, and it is frustrating if you are a Tigers fan, especially coming off of the season you had last year.
Yeah, and look, they still can make moves. There's still opportunity to spend, but I just thought that you owed the fans a little bit more excitement at this point in the season, just a little bit of something. And I get it, they're maneuvering and they have the specific plan and they're doing the build the right way thing, but it would have been nice to just have a winter meetings that involved a little bit of a splash signing, just one, even something a little bit more of a hopeful signing, somebody that was a little bit different, or I think just the very least you would have got a lot of support if you just would have moved down from Baez. We are paying Baez to not be here. It would have done wonders, because if you put him out there, I feel like it's just going to get incrementally worse with the lack of support, because the team played better when he wasn't there. They literally got to the postseason with him hurt. And it's just, it was so disappointing. But like I said, we're holding out hope that maybe the Tigers will do something relevant to help the baseball team get better. Because, yeah, look, the Tigers can get to the postseason with what they got, but they're going to end up in the same spot. The teams that were in the Final Four spent a shit ton of money, and they're spending even more. So they're not spending; they're spending more. So, and you got to be able to do things wisely and do things, but don't act like a cheap mid-market team when your owner is one of the most wealthy owners in Major League Baseball. So we'll see what happens, but hey, you can go down to Comerica and get your seat with your ass cooled. All right, that's what the fans really want. They want to drink $25 beer and have their ass cooled. Thank you, Detroit Tigers. That's what they paraded out in the media, which is, hey, take a look at this club that none of you guys will be able to see. Oh, great, what do you get? Well, you get to have a bigger ass seat, and you get to have a cooling station and a hot waitress that's going to take care of you, and whatever you need, you get to park down, under the stadium and get in fast. It's great. Well, how much is it going to cost? Oh, it's probably for corporate. It's going to be like a $250,000 or minimum. I was like, I don't care. Is there a single game? Can I get like a 3-inning package for like $100 to at least experience it and see it for a couple minutes? But my God, that's the thing they did, is they said, oh, we got a winner. Let's build some more corporate seats. But I get it. Hey, if the corporation's got to pay to be able to get talent, do what you got to do. But hey, maybe a giveaway where you can put some real fans, some of your diehards, in those seats. But all right, let's turn our attention to something positive. The Detroit Lions are about to play a Super Bowl preview contest against the Bills. Everyone's excited about a 12-1 team. They were able to defeat the Packers on Thursday Night Football. Record-setting, 17+ million people streamed it on Prime. And why not? The Lions are great. They're entertaining. They score points. They hit. They have aggression. They go for it on fucking their own side of the field. They're crazy. They got a quarterback that's, making the comeback of all time in regards to reshaping his reputation. So the Detroit Lions drew, and it was a good game. A little bit too close for comfort, but hey, cuz that's what the Lions do. They show up, they grind, and they win. And luckily they were able to overcome the chaos in regards to all the defensive replacements that were there. Now, to me, you have to keep it in perspective. I think if that game took place with those players at Lambeau, they probably lose that game. But with the support of Ford Field, with the fact that, hey, late in the game when the Packers were driving, Turner makes the tackle late, you make the stop, and it's a tie game, you get the ball, and you make the plays late. And it's an unbelievable situation because we're watching a football team that just won 11 consecutive football games. 11. There were stretches, I think, in 6 years doing the podcast, they didn't win 11 games. Matt Patricia, in his tenure, barely won just a little bit over 11 games. To see what's going on now has been unbelievable. How did you? What was your takeaway from that contest? How excited are you now that we're talking about a 12-1 football team atop the NFC, 11 straight NFL football games won by the Lions?
It kind of feels like every week we just get a little bit more uncomfortable with being in this seat because they are in the driver's seat right now. They basically control the NFC. And honestly, if you look across the league, this is arguably the best team in the league. I don't think Kansas City holds a candle to this team. I feel like Kansas City gets lucky every single week. Baltimore would be a bit of a challenge for this Detroit Lions team, I think. And we're going to get a bit of what could be a playoff preview this week when they take on the Bills. But my big takeaway from this game against Green Bay, and this was an important game. This was a game where you could make a deal with the devil, and we're like, look, let me win this week. I'll give you the following week, and we'll call it even. You probably would have did that because it meant so much because it was a divisional win. It was a game against Green Bay, so you push them back a little bit further and kind of get yourself a little bit more breathing room with them. You need Minnesota to slip up to get a little bit more breathing room. You need Philly to kind of, I don't know, something to happen there, and it sounds like they're arguing within each other. So maybe Philly's falling apart from the inside out, but we'll sit back and watch that. But the biggest thing I took away from this is Dan Campbell is completely in tune with this team. Dan Campbell knows this team like the back of his hand. Dan Campbell told you everything you needed to know about the state of this defense when he went for it on the 4th and 1 from the 30 in the third quarter. He told you everything you needed to know when he went for it on the 4th and 1 with 20-some seconds left in the game, and they were well within field goal range. It was a chip shot for a field goal. This defense is leaking. This defense was dead. This defense was gassed after that first half. I think Dan Campbell went into that room before the game and was like, look, defense, I need you to hold up for a half. Offense, it's on you. Get us a lead, and then let's ride you for the second half. Defense, you got to give me everything you got for that first half. And the defense did their job. The defense did everything they needed to do for that first half. But they came out that second half, and they were getting torched. They were leaking. They were tired. They were gassed. And I think Dan Campbell realized that. Dan Campbell knew that. He knew that was going to be the problem. You had guys that you had brought in off of a couch 3 days earlier, and they're in your starting lineup. There's no way they're in condition for 4 quarters. They're just not. So Dan Campbell leaned on the unit that he trusts the most, and that's his offense. And yeah, I will argue you to the death that going for it on 4th and 1 from the 30 when you've got the best punter in the league is not smart. You could have flipped field position with Jack Fox. He could have kicked the ball, and you could have got them within their own 20, and you could have called it a day. But Dan Campbell didn't want to put his defense in the position where Green Bay is going to continue to chew up clock and chew up yardage and keep the defense out there, gassing them even more. Putting them in that short field position, this guy might have been playing 3D chess because putting them in that short field position, he knows there's going to be limited reps that these guys are going to be put out onto the field for. It's going to get them on the field and get them off the field. Either we're picking it up and they get to stay on the sideline and they get to recuperate a little bit longer, or they're going out there and it's a short field and it might be a total of 8 plays before Green Bay scores. And for the most part, that was kind of the case. Green Bay scored really, really quickly. Next thing you know, the offense is going out there and the offense is chewing up clock and putting points on the board. So I think Dan Campbell, as much as people like to go back to that initial press conference, right, where he's talking about eating kneecaps and he's a meathead and he's this and he's that and he's this emotional guy who's just kind of all over the place. I think Dan Campbell, we talked about smartest guy in the room with the Detroit Tigers. I think Dan Campbell might actually be the smartest guy in the room. I think he has the pulse of his team. He understands what he has and what he's working with every single week. I think this guy, for the most part, is taken a little too lightly. And I think the way a lot of the national media looks at him is through these tainted glasses. I think the way a lot of people who really criticize what he's doing don't necessarily understand where he's coming from and what he's working with and what he is capable of doing. I think this guy is incredibly intelligent, and I think he understands what his guys are up against. And remember, this is a team that had, 14 guys on IR from the defensive side of the ball. I think they have something like 10 guys starting on that defense who weren't there at the start of the year. Like, you are so down low on your depth chart. You're just trying to pull guys up who are healthy, just trying to fill spots. You're just like, look, go take care of this. And these guys just aren't in shape or aren't in the condition to be able to go out there and withstand full four quarters of a game. And like I said, I did not like the call from the 4th and 1 from the 30. But in hindsight, looking back on it and looking at where this team was, I kind of get it, right? And I thought it was a risky play going for it on the 4th and 1. And you just easy chip shot, hit the field goal. But Dan Campbell didn't want to put his defense back out there because he didn't trust those guys to be able to hold up that late in the game because he knew what condition they were in. And then you cut to a video at the end of the game where you're inside the locker room. You got guys like Dan Skipper, who's been on this roster all season, and he's just vomiting into a garbage can because he's just gassed out. Like, it tells you everything you need to know about this team and kind of where they're at, right? Like, these guys were giving it everything they needed. Also, this was their 4th game, and I think it was like 22 days. Like, that is crazy. These guys were basically playing a game every 5 days. They haven't had a chance to rest. They haven't had a chance to recuperate. Their legs were dead. They were tired. And that's why he did what he did. And what I want to understand from you, and I want to get this from your perspective, right? Because you're there, you're covering the team. You are in the locker room. You get to have the conversations with the players. You get to have the conversations with Dan Campbell. You get to kind of understand the mindset that they're bringing every single week. And I do think it changes every single week. I don't think Dan Campbell is doing these things all the time. I think he's doing it, and he's picking and choosing when he's doing it. What's your comfort level playing this all-in, go-for-it style, even when you're in your own zone, even when you're backed up to your own red zone? What's your comfort level with them doing this? Because you're a fan before you're a reporter.
Yeah. And so I'm taking the simplistic approach. I like it as long as it's successful, right? It's not to...
you can't do that. Come on.
Okay, no. Here's what I think. And I'm going to elaborate further. But here's the deal. What stings for me is I've always wanted the Lions to build an all-world defense where Dan Campbell didn't have to go for it that much. They finally did it. Unfortunately, one side of the ball gets decimated, and Dan Campbell knows that. So this is partly a combination of knowing that this is a telling sign that the defense clearly is depleted. The NFL doesn't let you play defense. They would have called some shitty flag on Carlton Davis or Terrion Arnold. And look, when you have it 4th and short with that offensive line, it would be crazy to try and just give the ball back with 40 seconds left when you can just go for it. But it was crazy. I wonder what would have happened had Jared Goff fallen and they did not get the first down. Does that change anything? Because look, here's what's happened. And to put it into context, Dan Campbell is super aggressive. People like it because the Lions were successful in the regular season. He did get a lot of flack for going for it in the NFC Championship game. These analysts keep bringing it up, and they're dismissing that Josh Reynolds, dropped footballs, that Gibbs fumbled the ball, that a cornerback did not get his body right and he had a football bounce off his head, and literally a miracle play goes into the arms of a 49ers receiver. But in the end, we don't know what would have happened had the Lions kicked the field goal, taken the points. We assume they get the points, they extend their leads, and it puts more pressure on the 49ers. But we don't know. But I would have loved to have seen the Lions, give the defense a chance, kick the field goal, go up by 3, and see. But they didn't do it. So to me, I'm more old school in the fact that I wish defenses, when you build a good defense, then you can give the football back to the opposition. But look, prime example, cuz the Jets did the very same thing that the Lions tried. Different outcome, though. Here's what happened. They did not go for it on 4th down. They kicked the field goal. Miami gets the ball back, tie the game, go to overtime, win. Jets never see the ball again. So aggression pays off in football. He is changing mindset. But he was asked a great question on his weekly radio interview. He said, why don't you think more people do it like you? Why aren't people copying it? Why is it you and Sean Payton being looked at right now as the renegades? And he's like, look, it's pretty much common sense that if you don't have a team that can execute it, when you go for it on 4th down and you don't get it, you get roasted. You get torched. And Dan Campbell does, like, if you go on Twitter, on our Twitter page during games, at Detroit Podcast, one of the most engaging tweets we have is when we say, hey, did you agree with Dan Campbell? Yeah, no. And it just, boom, within 40 seconds, 100 comments come flying in. Analytic, it's a big debate. But right now, we can't argue against it because Dan Campbell's team has been successful at a high rate in the regular season. So like I said before, at Lions on SI, on Twitter, at Detroit Podcast, the only way that Dan Campbell, I think, can stand and plant his flag is if he goes for it again at 4th down in the Super Bowl and executes. Lions down 3 or Lions tied, and boom, goes for it on 4th and 2, gives it to David Montgomery, and boom, you get the game-winning touchdown, and nobody will have the right to speak of this again, because this literally is the only thing that you can criticize Dan Campbell for. That's the only thing. Players love him, winning games, 11-game winning streak, and people are still criticizing him. So my comfort level is there because typically it's always like 4th and 2, 4th and 3. The one that was crazy, but you realize in the end they gave up a touchdown. They went for it on 4th down on their own side of the field and didn't get it. They cost them a touchdown. It didn't impact wins and losses. That's the crazy part. But when you get to the postseason, the mistakes are amplified. Like you can get away with this stuff in the regular season. The playoffs are completely different. It did cost you. You gambled.
See,
so cuz I'll say this, and this is the stance that everybody's going to have to take. When you have the live by the sword, die by the sword attitude, there is a chance, guys, and we're saying it now. I hope, knock on wood. I'm knocking. I'm hoping that the die by the sword does not happen in the Super Bowl. Because if it does, you guys can't cry about it. You'll sit there stunned, and I'll sit there and come back and say, hey, you wanted it, deal with it. There's no sympathy because live by the sword, you guys are all in agreement that he does it. Okay. I just wish that the defense didn't get so many injuries because we could explore if Dan Campbell would have dialed back.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the case, right? Like, so I think he plays with what he's got. And I think when you have a former player and now an analyst come out and kind of take shots at Dan Campbell, I think it's a little bit unfortunate. I want to get your thoughts on what Teddy Bruschi said on ESPN. And this is part of the snippet that we've got here. There are no more ankles and kneecaps to bite. You're on top. Start playing like it and start coaching like it. Does Dan Campbell need to adjust how he's coaching and limit those 4th downs and the bravado on 4th down? Because I would tell you, I don't think so. If you look at his record, right, I think he wins more than he loses. And I think with his 4th down gambles, I think it puts this team in better spots than it hinders them. Now, yes, in this specific case, in this game, going for it on 4th and 1 from your 30, it did cost you 7 points, right? You did give Green Bay a touchdown, but I think he's playing 3D chess. I think he's 6 levels above everybody else because he's like, look, these guys are gassed out. I'll get them on the field, and I'll get them right back off, and the offense is going right back there, and he knows he can put the pressure on his offense to go and win him football games. It's one of those deals that I feel like him and Jared Goff made. He's like, look, you're going to have to carry this team. The way this team is currently built, you're going to have to carry it. You're going to have to be the guy who goes out and outscores the opponent because our defense right now is decimated. Like, no defense in the league can do what this team is currently doing because they're still winning games and they are just completely and utterly depleted of talent. You've lost essentially all of your starters, and then you've lost a bunch of backups. And you are now playing with some of your reserves, and you're playing with third stringers. And that's what you've got going out on that field every single week, and yet you're still able to rattle off wins. So when a guy like Teddy Bruschi comes out and starts talking this mess about Dan Campbell, here's the thing. National guys are not dialed in. They basically get their cue cards from a producer, and they go out there and they read stuff, and they fake some emotion. All right? That's what the national guys do. Colin Cowherd does it all the time. Listen to Colin Cowherd. Listen to what he says. I think he's incredibly talented, but listen to what he says. Because he'll talk about one thing one way to start a week, and then by the end of the week, he's flip-flopping. Depends on who's producing his shit that week. And who's writing his cue cards? Because he's all over the place. The guy is a master flip-flopper. All right? The national guys do not understand what goes on here day in, day out. This defense is completely obliterated. He knows he can lean on his offense. This team is built offense first, which you and I both would love to have a dominant defense. This team had a dominant defense to start the year. That dominant defense has been obliterated. You are now grabbing guys off of the scrap heap and you're dusting guys off of mothballs to get them onto the field to give you meaningful downs. So you're going to lean on your all-world offense where you've got a two-headed running back as a monster. You've got an all-world wide receiver. You got a speedster wide receiver. You got a guy that Denver threw away who is a perfect fit for what you need here. You've got a great offensive line where you're able to bring in guys like Dan Skipper who have been cut 8 times, and he's able to go out there and give you meaningful snaps and then go puke in a trash can at the end of a game. And you've got Jared Goff who's been there, done that, and he's here doing it now. What are your thoughts on national guys and them talking about how Dan Campbell's got to tone down the bravado? Because I think they need to cram it and shut it.
Yep. Now, here's the one we can dismiss. I think Rob Parker was incredibly disingenuous. People just call him out for just saying it just to say it. When you come out and say he's a bad coach, it makes no sense because he's 12-1 and he got to the NFC title game last year. So it flies in the face.
Bro's about to win the what is it? The Coach of the Year award.
Yeah, so it's just disingenuous. But hey, we'll take the attention. It's fucking hilarious because really in the end, people are just pointing at him saying, you kind of sound really dumb when you say it, and that's not the kind of really attention you want to get. Maybe that's why his project...
He's still bitter about all the stuff with the Lions because it ended up losing his post here in Detroit because of the Rod Marinelli.
Yeah, and his project flopped in Detroit less than 90 days, which is crazy. Really interesting that the radio station let him lease airtime, and whenever people try that, it's always interesting that more and more people keep trying it and more keep closing. This one closed real fast, but it's real interesting that he just didn't try it on his own. Instead, he wanted to lease airtime in Detroit with the takes that he gives. Maybe you don't want to slam the clientele of the fan base that you're trying to acquire listeners to. Common sense there, Rob. Hey, way to get those investors their money back. But okay, we'll talk about the one that is getting a little bit more traction, which is Teddy Bruschi. Because you think about it and you say, okay, what's a smart television analyst really doing slamming Dan Campbell? Do you think in any capacity he brought the petty? Because where did he play? The Patriots, who got unceremoniously dismissed, and when you bring up his name, everybody just shits all over it. And we've asked now a couple years past, do you guys forgive Matt Patricia? Hell no, stop asking. No, we're not forgiving. I'm like, guys, it's the holidays. Do you have a kind heart? We're winning now. No, stop asking. I'm like, okay. This is round 3. I will not ask anymore. You guys are not forgiving Matt Patricia. Do you think, and it's tough to think, but if something ever happened and someone did something to you, would I do that? Would I just go out there and say, well, they did kind of diss Adam. Let me just go and rip them just for the loyalty. I think he did it. I think he brought the piss and vinegar out of loyalty for the Patriots, and they bring it to the media. I mean, this is not a guy that really cares. Really, I think about journalistic integrity. He's probably like, I don't like it. Good take. I can stick up for my boy Matt, and I can stick up for the Lions unceremoniously blowing him out. Do you think he legitimately didn't care and just brought the petty? Because that's a weird take to have when a guy is 4 or 5 on 4th down, his team wins, and you're like, I don't want him on my sideline. You don't want to go with Dan Campbell? The guy would kill for you. He'll take care of your body. He'll do anything for you to win a game. Give me a break. I just think that I think Teddy Bruschi brought the petty.
Yeah. I don't know so much if it's that. I think he just doesn't understand what's going on here. I could see it, though, because, again, those dudes who were brought up in that Patriot way, it is so incestual. There's something weird about it, right? Yeah. Like they are always trying to protect and cover each other, and it's like they all take this weird blood oath for Bill Belichick and that coaching staff. So, there's the possibility, but I just think it's more he's misinformed, and I think whoever's producing his shit just maybe didn't give him the full story, just gave him part of the argument that he was out there trying to make.
But luckily the panel did say, hey, man, luckily it was one to, like, I think he was the lone voice like that. So I do think maybe, what you're saying is that, hey, maybe it's a little combination of he's willing to do it, because you can't just have 5 people all saying the same thing. That's why I'm not really a fan of these 6 people panels. I'm more interested in like 2 or 3, because then you can have authentic conversations. And so they're probably, the producer's like, okay, we need a dissenting opinion. Who's willing to give it? And Rex is like, I can't give it. My son's on the staff, and everybody else wants to be on the right side of this. So he's like, all right, I'll do it. And he's got an interesting reason as well. So I could see that as well, a little bit of a contrived nature, because to spice it with, I don't want him on my sideline. Like I said, you can disagree with it, and you can bring up the NFC Championship game. I like the idea where he says you got to coach like you're a big dog, but you can't be a big dog when 18 guys are on IR. You lost a big chunk of your roster, so that number should have come his way. 18 guys on IR will change things. So, look, it's interesting to talk about. It will be debated. I think that's the only thing that people debate about now with Dan Campbell is the aggressiveness. But I think, look, the good thing is that if you go back and listen, which I did, if you listen to his presser, his very first presser, he basically laid out, this is how we're going to play, tough physical, we're going to be aggressive, and we're going to try to do everything humanly possible to win football games. And that's what's happened. And now there's a big one this Sunday, and I'm bummed out a little bit that the Bills lost, because there's going to be some added motivation for them to clean up their shit that they put out there in terms of defense, because the Rams definitely took advantage of a great performance by Puka Nacua and Stafford, and I think the Bills are going to play a much better brand of football than they were able to, and they have a couple guys that were hurt that will come back. Maybe Keon Coleman will let me see a catch from a Spartan, because Jaden Reed sitting in the press box, I'm like, can Jaden Reed just do a little something and the Lions win? Nope, Jaden Reed, a big fat 0. And I'm like, okay, well, there's no fun in there for me personally. So maybe Keon Coleman and Dalton Kincaid coming back can do some things to make it a more competitive game as well. But I think because this has a chance to be a game where, luckily, the Lions could get some guys back. I think the Lions and the Bills are going to put on a show in front of the national audience there at CBS, and it's going to be a real good football game, back and forth. Josh Allen may take over the game at times, but in the end, I feel like it's another Lions gritted out situation where it's going to go back and forth, and it's going to be a situation in which the Lions, if they get the ball last, they'll execute. But I think, and this is a good thing too, with a team that's coming in with this caliber, the Lions are going to focus. They're going to say, the narrative from Dan's got to be, this is a team that you could stare at in the Super Bowl. Let's show them what we got. And boom, let's go out there. And the extra rest has to be some rocket fuel for these guys. A little bit more healthy for the Lions. A little bit home field advantage. Bills don't play a great brand of defense. I think the Lions continue their winning ways, but there's going to be a lot more. They might be going into the fourth quarter late. This one might be one where they're trailing by a touchdown and need to make that defensive stand. How do you see this one playing out? What level of concern do these Bills give you heading into this game?
I think this is going to be a great game.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this. I think it's going to be fantastic. And look, I think the 10 days rest helps, especially when they're coming off of that gauntlet of games that they just had to play. Like I said, I think it was like 4 games in 20 days or 4 games in 22 days. It was absolutely nuts how many games that they've had to play and how beat up they were and how they were able to survive that. I don't see a letdown game here. This is a big, important game to this team. And I think kind of watching what took place with that Rams game, like I think the Bills are going to want to kind of correct a couple of things coming out of that Rams game. But I think the run game for the Lions is going to be successful. I think guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown are going to exploit that middle passing area. Some of those short yardage catches, anywhere from 5 to 8 yards downfield. I think that opens up for a guy like Amon-Ra. And I think you can see a guy like Jameson Williams be utilized similar to how Puka Nacua was used. A couple end-around reverses, a couple little handoffs here, utilizing his speed to get him out on the edge where he can really take advantage of what's going on there. Now, all that being said, the Bills have a crazy explosive offense and is led by Josh Allen. And running quarterbacks give us fits and give us headaches. I think getting guys healthy and getting guys back along that defensive front and on that defensive line, I think that helps. I think that helps contain Josh Allen. I think this secondary, as banged up as it is, I don't think the secondary is the problem. As much as everybody wants to kill Vildor and kind of murder the secondary and crush Kerryon Arnold for his pass interferences, I think this secondary has been really, really good. Yes, it's frustrating at times, but I still think it's very, very good, and I think it has the ability to lock down these Bills wide receivers. I think the Lions win this game. I do think you're right. I think it comes down to the fourth quarter. I think it's going to be important to be the team who gets the ball last in this game. I think the Lions win by a Jake Bates field goal, though. I think it's going to be high scoring. This is going to be absolutely nuts. I don't know if it'll be as high scoring as the Rams-Bills game was, but I do think this is going to be one of those ones where you're going to need to buckle up. You're going to have to put your hard hat on, and you're going to need to get ready for some big crooked numbers. I think this game ends 38-35. I think the Lions win. I think it's a Jake Bates 43-yard field goal that gets the job done.
13-1. Let's go. That's what I'm talking about. Rock Josh Allen. Don't let you, cause when Josh Allen takes off, the speed in which he can, you just don't see it from a lumbering guy. Like, to me, my brain always sees Matt Castle. You know what I mean? And this guy, every week, he still continues to shine via the ground. And I'm like, dude, this guy is freakishly athletic. He keeps doing it. And my brain's going to have to recognize, man, this guy can single-handedly do some things against the Lions. So you better make sure you contain Josh Allen, because he can just do it on his own. And he's got no problem. Do you see the movie? He made a move on a defender where he juked to the inside and then cut like within a second. It was a running back juke, and he just made the Rams defender look like a total clown. So it was crazy to see the Bills game. I enjoyed it. It was also good, too, to sit back without the Lions being available on Sunday to watch other football. Man, it's crazy. The Eagles and Vikings keep winning. And I think, like I said it last week, it's good for the Lions. They know that, hey, let's just keep winning. We're forced to. And Dan Campbell said it, too. He's like, I like that they keep winning because it makes his team focus. Like, hey, if you do lose, if you end up losing, you might end up being the 2 seed. So I think that the Lions will be sharp. It'll be a Goff versus Josh Allen kind of contest, and the Lions will keep rolling offensively. Let's hope that the offense can stay healthy and continue to grind, because it is, like I said, really crazy that, the Lions went into that game with Aleem McNeil being the only last guy remaining, last man standing on the defensive line. And he goes out. Comes back, goes out again. He is in concussion protocol. And at the time of this recording, it's before the first Lions practice. So you'll know more Wednesday, Thursday. Check, guys, if you don't know, 4 p.m. every single day on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday is your time to learn about the injuries. There will be times where we report on what happens at practice throughout the day in the mid-afternoon. So typically, if you're around noon and 4 and you peek at your phone, hit at Detroit Podcast, the notifications, and you'll find out who practices and who doesn't. But the biggest update is 4 p.m. That's the injury report. That's where the guys are listed as a full participant or limited, and it gives you a good sign. Typically, guys that don't practice don't play. And that's where you can kind of get a clue as to who's available. I think the Lions are going to be a little bit healthier. They will start to get some guys back, probably DJ Reader, Taylor Decker, probably trending towards playing. So that's a great sign. But Lee McNeil, maybe you take an extra week precaution. They've typically been a team that, is a little more cautious. So, I think that Lee McNeil is a little bit more questionable. You don't want to rush that back in any way, shape, or form. As a result, cause did you see what happened in the Dallas game? I learned about. I didn't watch it live. I'm having a hard time staying awake past 10:30 during these games. But to see the fact that they blocked a punt, and then Amani Arawarie picked up the ball and cost the team, felt bad for him seeing him leave the field with a towel over his head. But man, he made an epic special teams blunder. And the crazy part was seeing Micah Parsons on the bench. Like you could almost relate viscerally to a guy that's like, I put in all this work, all these hours. How the hell did we lose when we blocked the punt? They had the game won. You just let the ball sit there. It was 4th and 26 or whatever it was. Ball gets blocked. You just let the ball sit there. Game's over. And he's sitting there like rocking, like he's going to have a massive, like just about to pick up the bench and throw it into everybody. That's how frustrated he was at losing. It was tough, but you hate to see it. But, man, I don't know if it's some karma thing, but, man, the Cowboys' loss when they could have got to 6-7 was indicative of a crazy season. Monday night games have been crazy, but Jamar Chase and T. Higgins really put on a show. And so the primetime games were pretty decent this weekend.
Yeah, look, I love watching Dallas lose.
Yeah,
as
everybody
much as
does.
possible. So to watch the end of that game and to see how it finished was exhilarating for me. I can't stand Dallas. I don't understand going into that game against the Bengals. I had no idea. I couldn't wrap my brain around how the records were what the records were. I was like, how is Dallas better than the Bengals? The Bengals have a very high-powered offense. They just can't seem to get out of their own way, and they end up losing games. But it was awesome to see that. Again, Amani Aroarie, a guy who I thought was going to be much better when he was here with the Lions than what he actually turned out to be. Just did not fit what Aaron Glenn's scheme was. And, good for you in Dallas. I was excited to see them lose. I can't stand Dallas.
Yes,
I hate Dallas so much.
Yes, this weekend it's the MVP showdown. Jared Goff, Josh Allen. Let's see who performs the best and let the best team win. It's going to be a knockout, drag-out contest. Man, Sunday, 4:25, Ford Field. Get your popcorn ready. CBS. It's going to be great. And to end the show with the single greatest news that Doc can report via the podcast airwaves for the calendar year 2024, I was successfully able to defeat Jock not once, but twice.
2 times.
In fantasy. It was beautiful.
I think if I get by the first round matchup, I think I meet you in the playoffs.
Yeah,
to go to the
it's crazy. Our playoffs are set. I play your dad to start. Second seed, 10-4 season. Very proud. I give myself the best chance. Picked up some good players, I think, at the spot I drafted. I'm very happy with my year. I really want to win, but in the end, it was a fun year. I enjoyed the way our fantasy league went down this year, and whatever happens, it's out of my control. I'm going to try my best to set the best lineups. I think I'm in the shittier end of the draw, but I have to play potentially your brother-in-law or your stepdad. So I'm in that mindset of like I really want that trophy, but I put myself in the best position, and it was crazy knowing that I could have also cost myself I did the rare thing by playing 2 tight ends, but luckily it was one of those deals where the tight end got 0 points until the very end. Jonnu Smith, who had 3 great games on my bench, I said, fuck it, let's do it against Adam. And finally, at the very end, everybody's like, why is Jonnu Smith sucking? Well, I can tell you why, because I started him. That's why he sucked. Miami fans, that's literally why he sucked. But he came through, and that helped me win. And thankfully, Brown all year was a good pickup. And my God, I had fun this year. Probably the most fun. I'm desperate for that trophy. But if not, I inch closer with a successful season to try and get that elusive fantasy title in our fantasy league. So you, on the other hand, can fairly factually say pretty average year. 7-7.
Yeah, for sure. Dude, my season started off, I think I was like 5-1 to start, and somehow I ended up 7-7. So it's been rough down the stretch here. And it's if you go through and you look at my games, I had, I think, 3 of those 7 losses, maybe 4, were by no more than 5 points. I think this week I only lost to you by what, like 3.5, 4 points. I lost to my niece by 1.5. I lost to my brother-in-law by 2. So like I lost to my stepdad by I think 1 point. So like all incredibly close games that I ended up losing. Just dumb stuff happened. So, but like you said, very average. Incredibly average.
Let's see what happens
going into the playoffs.
Yep. Follow along on future episodes of Doc and Jock. Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Keep up your engagement. We love it. We love reading the comments, the jokes. We love riling it up a little bit in the world of Detroit sports. The most interactive platform by far. Hit us up. If you agree or disagree with anything that you heard on this episode, please feel free, share it. We enjoy bantering and debating and getting into it with the great fans of Detroit. And in the next week, pay attention to the Red Wings and their new goalie, Kosa. We'll see how he progresses, if he gets more opportunities to play. Congrats on his first win. Red Wings still kind of trudging along, but we'll see if he provides them any sort of spark as they make their way continuously now in the month of December. Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter at AdamRSTROZ. Make sure everywhere or anywhere that you listen to podcasts. Just type in Detroit Sports Podcast and our content will find you. Thank you, everybody that's liked and subscribed, listened, shared it, and really, in the end, that's what we like. If you like what you hear, just tell 1-2 other people, hey, these two guys have been going strong for 11 years, nearing 600 episodes, sharing our thoughts passionately about the world of Detroit sports. And I can't wait for next week when we break down the Bills game on the next episode of Doc and Jock.
You fucking podcasters. I said don't let them in here.